what would be the policies that you'd go to?
So in our work at ISGAP, we've been focusing on higher education and the impact of the Muslim Brotherhood through the Qatari regime and its association with the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, even their good relations with the Iranian revolutionary regime, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. On the one hand, on the other hand, they're funding our universities more than any other country in the world, and that to us is extraordinarily alarming. It's a regime that has an agreement, a spiritual oath to the Muslim Brotherhood that calls not just for the destruction of the State of Israel, but for the murder of Jewish people.
But Dr. Part, one of the things I'm after is, how do you document it? Are you getting that information from ultimately the university's filings and not the tax filings? Where are you getting the data?
So we've used the Department of Education it's no longer, as of a few weeks ago, it was closed down, unfortunately. But there was a portal where we were able to see what was being declared by the universities to the government. And through our research, we were able to measure some level of discrepancy between the money that the universities are receiving and the monies that the universities are reporting to the government as required by law. And it's an indication of discrepancies. We know that we're just probably touching the tip of an iceberg. We estimate that Qatar has between $500 billion to $1 trillion that it's using for soft power, investing in the economy of the United States, from foreign entities into the United States, and also buying domestic companies, corporations, banks, which then act to use soft power legally from domestic corporations.
This up to anybody that wants to answer on the panel. Are you surprised to hear of this group's connection to American Muslims for Palestine or the activity that this group is engaged in on American campuses? Dr. Small?
Thank you for your question. And I think just to reiterate what my colleague is saying, that the connection between AMP and SJP, what's important to realize, in my opinion, is the ideology, the ideological roots of both organizations to the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood wants to replace democratic societies with a caliphate. They want to destroy the State of Israel and murder Jews. This is in their constitution. Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's not a surprise, therefore, that SJP called for identifying with Hamas, not just with the Palestinian people or the people of Gaza, but specifically with Hamas, with a designated terror organization. So I think the ideology is really important to consider.
Is there anything that American colleges and universities, or Congress for that matter, should be doing to ensure these groups are not indoctrinating students on campus in a way that results in violence and anti-Semitic behavior towards Jewish students?
So if I may, yes, I think it's essential that universities are transparent. They're 501c3s, they have tax-exempt status, and they should adhere to the law. The fact that universities are taking funds that support classroom activity, curriculum, research, and publications is, I think, of extreme importance. The fact that Jews are being maligned in the classroom as being portrayed as colonizers and apartheid supporters and white privileged people, it's important to understand that academia leading up to the Holocaust portrayed Jews as not white and poisoning the purity of the white Aryan race. This was supported by academia back in the day of eugenics and theology. And in less than 2 generations, professors now, with this funding, are now saying that Jews are white. And it's not that we're white, welcome to the club, and we're sorry for what happened. Now the Jews are the embodiment of white privilege, white supremacy, apartheid, colonialism, and occupation. It goes from the classroom to the encampments, and from the encampments with SJP, Muslim Brotherhood ideology in the classroom, encampments, and now on our streets. And we'll see this spilling onto our streets tomorrow.
Yeah, you will.
You'll see the anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-democratic rhetoric, and it's alarming. And I think we're at a tipping point.
What can we, as the government, what can we solidly do to stop this? The funding of these organizations, and I think, like I said, Mr. Fitzpatrick had mentioned a few of them, but I'd love to hear more solid things as well.
Thank you. And if I may, I think it's also important that the government investigates universities, because several universities are actually funding SJP on campus. And universities are receiving money from Qatar and Muslim Brotherhood associated foundations and organizations, and that needs to be investigated. And I also think, and my colleagues agree, that the Department of Education and the IRS should also enforce existing laws. And I think that's very important. And to look into Qatar, and there's the FARA issues as well in this country that needs to be addressed. And going back to Mr. Schneider, I just wanted to say, my colleagues and I, 10 years ago, did a report. We interviewed 10,000 people in 10 European countries, and we showed the correlation between what we call Israel bashing or anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And those who are Israel bashers or anti-Zionist are 13 times more likely than the national average to be anti-Semitic in the classical sense. And this study actually helped to create, in the IRA definition, the link between Israel bashers, people that dehumanize Israel, and associate Jews around the world to state policies. So that connection is strong, and it's the cutting edge, I suspect, of the new hatred that exists there, the contemporary anti-Semitism.
Dr. Small, how much unreported foreign funding to universities has your organization uncovered?
Doing research since October the 7th, we've come out with 11 reports. Several other reports look at funding issues. We found over $1 billion with a B dollars going to Texas A&M from the Qatar regime, the Qatar Foundation. In the contract that we uncovered, there were 502 research projects funded by Qatar at Texas A&M. 502 projects. All of the intellectual property rights was transferred to Qatar. We flagged 58 projects with dual-use military and 13 projects with dual-use nuclear research. So we're calling on the federal government, the Department of Energy, and other relevant departments to investigate these projects, the nature of the projects. We're concerned about security and our national interests globally and certainly in the region. We uncovered $10 billion going to Cornell University. So $8 billion in their campus in Qatar, in Doha, and $1.95 billion in Cornell, the American entity and the Qatar. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no, I very much appreciate you uncovering that. I think we've actually, at our last hearing, we actually remarked on the huge amount of dollars that are coming from Qatar.
we can submit this. We have more information.
Dr. Small, talk about your study. The study that the Global Anti-Semitism and Policy found the correlation between money of foreign funds and the presence of activism of anti-Semitism on these college campuses. Can you just talk a little bit about that study? I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to hear about it again.
Cool. Thank you for the question. So in one of our studies since October the 7th massacre, we showed that American universities receiving money from Qatar have more than 300% increases of anti-Semitism on their campuses and in their classrooms.
Okay, so I want to clarify what you're just saying. I want everybody to hear this. So universities that took money from Qatar had a 300% increase in anti-Semitism than other universities.
Yeah, compared to American universities that are not receiving money from Qatar. So the
Unbelievable.
correlation is very strong.
That's a clue, isn't it?
Yep.
Wow. So back to you. What do we do?
Again, I think there should be transparency. I think the DOE and the IRS should enforce laws that exist and strengthen them.
Yeah, why is it? Why the Department of Education, why aren't they doing this? Because they're not. I mean, they see it, and they're not acting. Am I right?
It appears so, yes. I agree with you.
Yeah, it doesn't just appear, it's happening. And the Department of Education, shame on them. I mean, they are the arbiters. They are the ones that have to nip this in the bud, and they're not doing it. I know you don't want to throw an agency under the bus. I'm doing it for you.
Thank you.
How do we stop, as Congress, how do we stop these universities from continuing to purvey this hatred and vicious anti-Semitism against students, even in upstate rural areas like upstate New York?
So if I may.
Certainly, Mr. Small, feel free, or Dr. Small, I'm sorry, feel free to weigh in.
So I think you raise a very important point. I think we need to really look into foreign funding. We have the Qatari regime, which has a spiritual oath to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a reactionary social movement that's out to destroy Israel and murder Jews around the world and to destroy democracies, to use anti-Semitism to weaken and destroy the United States of America. And they're doing it right under our noses. The discourse in academia is poisonous. The discourse in the classroom is informing the encampments. So I think the connection between the intellectual environment and now the political environment is really important to understand. SJP is also being funded by universities. They're using university facilities, which are being funded by tax-exempt entities, the universities, which is important. So I think we're also reaching sort of a tipping point in the philosophical, political moment, and now we have to remember in places like Cornell and Columbia University in your great state of New York, faculty and students are not just being alienated at the intellectual level, they're really fearing for their physical security. At Columbia, we know that students and faculty could not go to classes. They had to attend classes online because of the threats to their physical safety at the height of these demonstrations and anti-Semitic demonstrations.